One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
Everybody, welcome back to Reason Reborn. I am here with my co-host, Cardiac Soul, who he actually remembered to change his name, and I didn't. Actually, no, you didn't change your name.
No, I didn't.
God damn it, this goddamn thing. I swear to God.
I think I don't even take blame for that. I blame this app.
Yeah, because I keep changing it.
Persisting them.
All right, that's better. Shit. Of course, you already know who I am, so blah, who cares? Anyway.
There's probably some like setting to do it, but
I think you honestly need to just do it like before you get on. Yeah. Like in your profile stuff. And it's like, I don't think about that shit.
I think about my audio visual struggles before that. But to answer your question, I'm doing spectacular.
Fucking nerd.
Those who get it.
Fucking nerd, I swear.
Man, it's Friday. We're heading into the weekend. Somehow, even though I work from home, weekends are still a thing to me. Well, to the extent that I choose not to work.
Yeah. So I got some good news today, which in the morning I will definitely go ahead and take care of. I have been put on the list for my vaccination. I just need to make an appointment. Oh. Hopefully it's Johnson & Johnson, so I don't have to come back. That's the only reason I would want Johnson & Johnson, so I don't have to come back. Because I'm afraid of needles. I don't like needles. And two, it's just like, I have to go to the back and forth thing. It's like, I understand. I'm not like against doing it. I just don't want to do it. So.
Well, I mean, last week I jokingly, begrudgingly had to give Biden some credit, him and his administration over this vaccine rollout. And just a week later, this asshole's already on the list.
Yeah. I will be one of the numbers that at least gets one vaccination. By the way, they said something between 40-50% of the country has already been vaccinated, I think. So, or at least had the one dose.
Right. Which, is still pretty good. And, as has been mentioned, even the one dose does give you a reasonable amount of protection. Which is not me telling you guys to go out and have an orgy or, do pretty much the same shit you guys have been doing despite the risk.
Well, this isn't on the topic, but it's a good point because, again, we talked about this and I was complaining to you the other day about how people are just packing in places and this is like no one seems to care. Like once they released the restrictions, I don't think people even cared about whether or not they got vaccinated. They were just like, oh, you're going to let me out? Boom, let's go. And they're just flooding places irresponsibly and doing the dumbest thing.
Yeah, it's not just the individuals, but the leadership where I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month or so. It was when I think Texas was talking about opening up again. And I thought, this is the problem. The second you guys see, numbers start to drop or whatever, you're like, it's over. And then you just start relaxing restrictions right when they should be kept up to really drive the numbers down. I think I mentioned it to you. It's like if your house was on fire or something, and then the firefighters like just started to put out the fire. You're like, all right, the fire's over. And then you walk in while it's still burning. Like, wait till the situation is resolved.
Yeah, people are impatient, and I fear that we're going to get another spike, but hopefully we won't. Like people keep it together as much as you can. We're getting closer and closer to the finish line. Let us do it the proper way, please.
I mean, like you just heard, the asshole over here getting his cootie protection. Like, so, you know, it's not like imaginary. People are getting it.
Yeah, we're all getting our computer chips put in our arm.
Yep. They'll be able to 24/7 notice what an asshole you are. All of you out there.
So stupid, I swear, the chip thing. Anyway, moving on to one of our 4 topics. So the weird article that came up, and I think it was you who introduced it to me. I can't remember if I sent it to you or you. It may have been me because I generally send all these crazy links that make us get angry once a week. So gun background checks and gun sales have soared in the wake of these shootings that have occurred over the past month. 30% increase from February is what the number is according to FBI. 4.7 million people, if you want to know the exact number. More than 2 million of those background checks were for new guns. So think about this. Out of the 4.7 people over the course of the last month who've gotten background checks and have gone to purchase guns, just under half of those people were new gun purchases. That means like, what, 4.7? That means close to 3 million people are now out there, at least, with more than one gun.
True enough. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast last time, but you know, we talked about the proliferation of guns in this country and just how many guns are in circulation. And maybe sometimes people get the wrong impression that gun owners only have one gun, but I've known people who pretty much collect them, damn near, like who have a small armory in their house. And you know, I'm laughing, but maybe somebody listening might have the same kind of situation. Like people just buy them like they're, I don't want to say toys, but essentially that same sort of collector attitude. Like, oh, I can't wait to finally get this in or that, you know, firearm in. It is not great to me to hear like that spike in sales. Because I mean, you know, to your point, the background checks are initiated in response to a sale. So that's just yet more going into circulation.
Yeah. Makes no sense. It's not going to help like change things as we've seen this past week, because there was another shooting in California this past week where a man, I think, was it an office building that he entered? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he opened fire, killing 4, one of them which was a 9-year-old child. So I don't know if like giving people encouragement to buy all these guns is a smart thing, because clearly a lot of people who have recently bought them, including this man, were all about ill intent.
Yeah, and in that case, I'd read a bit of the articles around that. It seems so far they think it was probably personal because he seemed to know the people that work there. I don't remember if it said that he worked there before, but there were personal and professional relationships in play. I doubt with that child, but
yeah,
we don't really know why he's there, as far as I know. What kind of grudge might have driven that? I don't remember if he survived that. I believe so.
Yes, he is. He has been arrested. They are trying to figure out what was his motivation. Of course, it was I believe, African American male who is of Muslim descent, which that's not going to go good. It's not going to go good at all in the court of public opinion.
I suppose not.
But either way, it doesn't matter. Whatever his race, just crazy. Like, people need to slow down.
I'm getting kind of irritated by that dimension of these discussions where you see, you know, first of all, it's already disheartening to see, you know, shooting after shooting, week after week. But the first thing, like, if you go to a comment section or something, the first thing people want to know is, all right, what race was he? You know, it's like, because on one side they're getting tired of like this, I guess, what they believe is just a narrative that like, oh, only white men are shooting people. It's like, it's not that only white people shoot people. Like, relax. That's never been the case. It has been the case that generally with these more, you know, mass shootings, that has been the case more often, but it's not like it's not like you're all the only people that commit crimes. Getting a little too sensitive about that.
Well, I think part of the reason, though, is kind of how things are framed. Because there are times where if a person of color commits a murder, the framing is going to be more sinister. But if it is, you know, someone who's white, like with the guy in Atlanta's, you know, situation, they were just trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And like, you got people on there talking about he was such a good guy, he was so quiet, and nobody thought he would ever hurt a fly. Like, he's not bad. This isn't a bad kid. Give him a break. Or like the police officer who got on stage and was like, yeah, I mean, he had a bad day. We all have him. Like, after he murdered those people in the spot. Like, no, it don't really work like that.
Well, I think the framing can cause that kind of reaction in different ways, like you just said. But I think what those people who get annoyed by it are responding to is, you know, we tell a certain story about a sort of attitude of, you know, say white male privilege, if we want to use those terms, this idea that, you know, you have some sort of problem and you're kind of entitled, I guess is the word I'm looking for, entitlement there. You feel entitled to take that out on groups of people through the use of gun violence against complete strangers for no apparent reason. Because you can't even compare it to, say, like gang or drug related violence, you know what I mean? Where there might be some sort of personal or monetary gain issue at play. You can't even compare it to that guy in California where it seemed to be a personal, professional issue. It was just sort of whatever random mental things are going on with them taken out on the public. So there's kind of a different terroristic aspect to it that seems to be tied more to white men, which I don't know that the narrative is inaccurate or anything, but I guess my point is I don't know that we need to keep constantly make that the first thing we focus on, like trying to figure out what their race was and trying to base our narrative around that point. I think it's maybe important, but like,
and that's the thing. It would be, in a perfect world, we wouldn't care, nor would we try to find reasons to understand and let them off for certain things. You know, it would be like, yo, this motherfucker's crazy. Then he needs to go to jail or whatever. Lock him up, please. But I mean, it's just generations of stuff, angst build up. That's just basically the issue, because again, black man shoots one person in a situation, and say you don't know what the situation is, what was the circumstances. 9 times out of 10, he's going to get harassed, and the white person's not. Even if it's rightfully so, even if it's wrongfully so. You know, it happens. And I think people, you kind of seize up in a way and do that, I hope he's not, you know, black thing, because you know how it's going to go.
sure.
It doesn't just, it goes just beyond that case. It starts to like permeate through everything else and affect other laws, and you know, we can't have these people coming here. We got to limit this. It's just like that angst build up by history. That's all. I don't think that we should still always feel that way, but I can't necessarily blame people for feeling that way, because history has proven it to be so. It's just a weird thing.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't want, you know, people to think that I have some huge issue with talking about, you know, say social identity in relation to gun violence, because it is a factor. When we see that so many of these mass shooters are white men, I do think that it could be the case that certain cultural aspects cause that difference. There is sort of this religious fixation with guns that largely that group has that might promote, more random violence like this. Same way you could talk about religious based violence if you want to talk about religious based terrorism. It is worthwhile to be able to discuss the violence around that as it is caused by that sort of religious belief. But I think what's kind of getting to me about it is I don't think most people are. It might sound kind of dickish for me to say, but I don't think they're thoughtful enough to be having that conversation in the first place. Because they don't really want to have it in terms of like, analyzing culture, causality, all that stuff. They just kind of want to, maybe they want to shit on the news like, oh, I bet CNN isn't going to show his face because he's black instead of white and it doesn't feed into their narrative, or, the other way around. Like, it kind of feels like they're constantly at war with other parts of the culture. And depending on, the ethnic background or whatever of the criminal, they can kind of use that to kind of boost their own narrative. They don't feel like it doesn't feel to me like they really care about the violence itself. I think that's why I get kind of tired of the conversation, because you just go to any comment section and see them trying to figure out the race and trying to make that some kind of weapon they can use against the other side socially.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Sorry, because I'm looking at this article, and you know how many mass shootings we've had since that? Just since the shooting at the spas, the guy going on the rampage. And I'm assuming there is a definition. I don't know. All of them seem kind of worthy. Because I was just about to say, I wonder what is the definition for a mass shooting. Like,
I'm not certain.
I hate to say it like this, but what's the number count that they count for people involved as far as victims before?
I don't know, but I thought the same, as grim as it is, I thought the same thing when I heard about one of those first sets this year, because I was like, I think that person killed 7 or 8 people. And I thought, I feel awkward saying it, but I thought, is 7 or 8 a big number? Is it a number worthy of the term mass? Which it's still horrific. It did make me wonder about the term again. Did you find the answer?
Yeah. So, and I'll send you the article so you can go, crazy at the title. So, since the shooting on the 18th, there has been a total of 30 mass shootings. Now, by looking at the numbers, I'm making the assumption that it's, I guess the criteria must be 4 or more. Actually, no, they actually said it. I glanced past that part. CNN defines a mass shooting as a shooting incident that results in 4 or more casualties, including the shooter. Okay.
I wonder if that's the definition we're all using, or if that's just CNN's. But
I know.
whatever.
But let's just
go
like
conversation.
But by theirs, it's been 20 and I'll do them in row. You had the March 16th shooting, or March 18th, shooting, where 6 Asian women were killed. March 17th in Stockton, California, 5 people who were preparing a vigil were shot by drive-by shooting. So maybe that's what they consider, it's random. After March 17th, March 18th, in Gresham, Oregon, 4 people were taken to the hospital after a shooting in the city of East Portland. Okay. March 20th. God, why are they stacked up like this? In Houston, 5 people were shot after a disturbance inside a club. One, why are y'all in fucking... God damn it, Texas. Why are you in a club anyway at this time? Let's see. One's in critical condition, by the way. Jesus, that's crazy. 8 people were shot on March 20th, also in Dallas, Texas. Okay. March 20th. God damn, was the 20th like a holiday for crazy people? Because that's the
I'm trying to
third
think if it was a
one.
holiday in general, but
Huh?
I was trying to think if it was a holiday or if there was something special about the day in general. I don't remember anything.
Jeez, well, 18 people were shot in that incident. Sorry, not 18 people. I think I mixed them up. See, 1 person was killed and another 5 were injured in a shooting at a legal party. Of course, it's a fucking party. There were 150 people there that fled. Y'all doing the house party thing. It's wild. Anyway, March 23rd was the Boulder, Colorado shooting at the King Soopers grocery store, which just ridiculous. March 23rd, Aliceville, Alabama. 2 people dead, 2 people injured. See, March 26th. Let's see. Two suspects shot 7 people. What the fuck? At a golf club. Okay. March 26th, Memphis, Tennessee. 5 people were shot. 3 were pronounced dead on the scene. 2 surprised. Again, no fucking reasons as to why they're doing this. March 26th, Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia. The list goes on and on, people. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Including apparently there was one in there were a bunch in this in my neck of the woods. One in DC on the 31st. 5 people were shot. It started as a dispute and ended with 2 people dead and 3 injured. Jesus Christ. And then in Essex, Maryland. I can never say that. Essex, Maryland. Jeez.
The struggle.
A guy shot his parents and then shot 3 other people.
Okay.
Alrighty. Yeah, no, it's fucking crazy. But yeah, that's just some of them. It's ridiculous.
But you mentioned the reason. I think, should I put this? Culturally in the country, we're all aware that we have a problem with gun violence. And I think one of the things that's sort of not mentally satisfying about dealing with it is we often don't know why, because we pretty much hear about it like right when it happens. Like I remember I was watching, it might have been the Boulder thing, or maybe it was the one before that with the parlors and stuff. But I was listening to the news and somebody was sort of lamenting that we don't really have any answers on like a body count or whatever yet. And they were like, it's been about 3 hours. I'm like, I mean, I guess it's typical to get, coverage as something is happening, but like we hear about the stories like while they are occurring before we have any real information about it outside of how many people have died. So
yeah,
you're kind of left with a shit ton of questions, trying to figure out like why a person would just suddenly fucking do something so horrific. Did he know one of these people? Did he have a mental condition? Was he trying to steal? Like it just gives you this sort of, I don't know what the term is. I don't even say lack of closure, but you get shooting after shooting, and then before you can even get the answers for one, you're kind of on to the next. So you're just kind of left with a laundry list of violence with very little to think through in that point.
Yeah. it's just gonna. I don't know. It's just. Hopefully, we'll get some help soon. This is why I need Congress to ram as much stuff as they could in like fast. Now. Don't let that fucking turtle control your destiny, please.
Well, one of those articles you sent, somebody made the brief either argument or point that, part of the reason the gun sales spiked so much is because it's a bit of a reaction to the idea that more gun legislation might come. So, may as well get our guns in before the freedoms get taken away.
And the funny thing is, nobody's like actually making the bold move of saying no. You have to get cable or else you can't access TV. We're no longer doing digital signals. We catch you doing a digital signal, we're gonna find you and prosecute something. I
think we might have talked about it last week. The point that we talked about getting background checks for gun sales and whatnot. We should do that stuff, but we do have already a shit ton of guns in circulation in this country. And based on that story, we just got a shit ton more. And I know it's a very uncomfortable point. Nobody wants to broach about going in and taking people's guns, but there's been so many sold at this point. Is that an unreasonable thing to start talking about?
Yes, it certainly is. At least that's how they make it. They make it seem like it's the worst thing. It's a weird culture of guns in this country. Oh, weird.
I could see, why it would be uncomfortable, the idea of, the government coming and taking your property and all that shit. And that logic might be fine if we had proper gun legislation in the first place. Then we wouldn't have so many guns. The thing is, they're not trying to come and
take it. They're not really trying to
No, I'm saying that I think we should have the discussion about taking it because there's so many. And I don't think that discussion is feasible because it's uncomfortable. Because I think we always go down this road. It's like, nobody's going to come and take your guns. I'm like, maybe they should come and take your guns. You have a lot at this point. Some of you motherfuckers have a dozen. I feel like already just by me even saying this, I'm going to get in trouble with somebody just because I'm advocating something that might sound extreme to people. But I don't know why we always got to be yield where we just assume that we should be nobody's going to come and take your guns. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that point anymore. I don't think that should be taken as a given. And that's why I'll never be elected as a politician, because that's kind of a radical thing to say.
No, but I don't think many people are saying snatch all the guns up. Everybody keeps saying we need better gun rules. We need better background check.
And I agree.
Guns are a problem. We need to fix this.
But am I off? If we say we need better background checks and this and that, only helps solve the problem of new guns that would go into circulation. It doesn't do anything about the ones that are already out. Well, I guess it would help, depending on the rules, prevent you trading guns you already own for free and shit off the books. But there are a lot. They're already out there. And I'm talking about it now because I don't know what the number was, 4.7 million sales or something like that. Yeah, that's a fucking lot. And it's the genie in the bottle problem. We could talk to her blue in the face about preventative measures, and we should take them, but we've already fucked up for so long that it's already an issue that we now have to maybe think about how to undo in some cases.
It's rough, and it's going to be interesting if they do try to do the gun laws. They kind of hinted towards it, and people freak the fuck out. So what happens when they stop hinting and they actually start to put down laws and take action? Then what?
Who knows? I don't think anybody's going to go as radical as I just said. Even I don't really have a good idea of what I would do. I just sometimes think we take certain points for granted, and I'm like, maybe we should talk about it.
Apparently not. Shoot them all. But what's the saying that Marge Simpson said her grandmother told her? Shoot them all and let God sort it out. That's pretty much what people seem to have the mentality of. I don't know. Anyway, scrolling through the topics here really quick. Forgive me. God, it's cold outside, by the way. It's just ridiculous. All right, here we go. Um, so with all the talk about mass shooting, we really need to talk about like what we're going to do with like security at the White House. Because today, well, not at the White House, at the Capitol building. I'm sorry. Today, two police officers were struck by a car that rammed the barricade in front of the Capitol. One of the officers was killed, and the other, I believe, was able to kill the suspect while being pinned against the wall. Of course, nobody knows the motivation. Um, who knows if they're even going to address this? It wouldn't hurt my feelings if they didn't, knowing how fucking slow and annoying, you know, the process could be.
If they didn't, what now?
Um, sorry, I was reading something. No, with the motivations of the guy, like finding out
Okay.
why.
If they didn't. Okay. Yeah.
Like the process of like finding out motivations. Of course, they're looking. At this point, stuff like that kind of doesn't matter to me, to be quite honest, because something's wrong. Like something's very, very wrong here.
Honestly, when I first saw that, the details of the attack, I suppose, because he, like you said, rammed his car, and I think he hopped out and took a knife to them. And it's kind of cynical, but my first thought was like, oh my God, we're gonna have those fucking people who, those guns don't kill people, people kill people, folks who are gonna be like, see, you didn't even have a gun or what, or didn't even use a gun, he just hit him with a car. Should we ban cars? Like, that's how dumb the gun debate in this country gets to where, like, I saw that story, my first thought was, here come the assholes. You're gonna be like, should we ban cars and knives because this guy used a car?
And that's what I mean by like it's gonna be a crazy process because that's what it's gonna come to. Like, see, somebody's gonna come out and be like, you keep saying guns. This guy didn't have a gun. So why should we give up guns? And it's like, I do know there's a problem where people feel bold enough, be it with a gun or without a gun, as they did without guns for the most part on January 6th, that they can do shit like this. Like, this shouldn't be the norm, but it's becoming the norm.
Yeah, and I don't know what causes it or how to address it. Like, I think that's why there would be some possible interest in understanding motives here, not just for curiosity's sake, but it's like, how do we even begin to address this if we don't even know what the fuck the causation was?
Yeah, because like I'm fine with understanding what's problems, like if it's a mental health issue and things like that, but I feel like a lot of this stuff gets bogged down into that, and it leads for some weird solutions. Like I could see Marjorie Taylor Greene right now just sitting there, and I haven't checked her Twitter. I'm not going to check her Twitter. I see her now starting a campaign about like, see, this is why you should let me bring my gun.
I mean, that kind of reaction happens too. But even when people bring up things like, oh, mental health and this and that, I never know why they fucking make that move, because they don't really care to do anything about mental health anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going to start providing funds to help deal with the country's mental health.
Because in the article, they were like, we wanted to check if he had mental health issues or what is like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, do you really care about his mental health?
And even if you were sincere in that, so what? Like, people, it's say people who are unstable and under supervision and care, you don't give them like sharp objects and shit, right? Like if you know they're a danger to themselves and to others, you don't give them more tools to be more of a danger to themselves and others. You take some of that shit away anyway. That's standard. So it's not really, in terms of like what we would do to prevent more harm, it's not really that relevant. Yeah. Or I shouldn't say it's not relevant, but it's not like an excuse to not take away, to not prevent those people from getting guns. Like it's a point that they bring up that is just, that they use as like some kind of defense, that it's really not. It doesn't matter in that regard.
Yeah. They don't really like, and it's, to be fair, it's not just the right. It's going to be a problem, like with the left too, because somebody's going to say something stupid on both sides. It's going to bother me when it's like, you know, perhaps you guys should try to really figure out how can I put this? You have to figure out how you're going to work together to solve the kind of like issues that we have in this country, in which people feel like the best way to get their point across is to do something like this. You know? Because you already let blood in the water, and hats off to the FBI, by the way, for the arrests that they've had. But you put the blood in the water on January 6th. And people like kind of poo-pooing it. You know, and I know it was mainly the, you know, Republicans doing that. But when you do that and you don't take it serious, people are going to keep doing these things because they know they can't. Even if this guy, his motivations might not have been just that. People do dumb shit just because now.
True. But I don't know what the deterrence for this is. I think, again, going back to motivation and stuff, that's part of the reason I'm curious sometimes, because I wonder, could they have been deterred from taking that action? I don't just mean like, oh, you know, maybe they had some mental health issue and they couldn't be deterred because they were, you know, quote unquote crazy. I mean, you know, say, for example, say you have somebody who's religiously motivated and they go for like a suicide attack. You know, they go to sacrifice themselves to take out whatever their target is. Saying that you're gonna like put them in prison, you know, like say we increased time in prison for these kind of crimes. Does it really matter if they were intending to die anyway? Like, are they going to be deterred from that? Like, that's part of the reason why it's kind of important to know. It's like, we need to understand why they wanted to do this so we know how to stop that kind of person. And part of my worry sometimes with some of these people is because some of them seem like ready to die. Like that guy who smashes into the Capitol barricade, whatever, against two people and charges at them with a knife. That seems like a person ready to be shot in the head.
Yeah. And they mentioned that he had some frustrations and confusion in his life. Some reason they mentioned he was Muslim and a member of the Nation of Islam. Which I thought was a weird thing to toss in right there. Because it's like, oh, what you're trying to say, it's like a terrorist attack or something?
I mean, if it is, be clear about it. No conjecture.
Yeah, like just saying like he was a member of the Nation of Islam is not really doing much other than inciting the idea, like, see, you know, that religion is out of whack and you should never indulge in it. Because everybody in that religion are crazy, you know.
Is it the Nation of Islam?
Yeah.
That's a specific group, isn't it? It's not just the religion.
Yeah. It's the group that Malcolm X was in before he left them and went on his own. It's basically an American-based, generally African-American religious, not necessarily organization, I should say, that, you know, uses the Muslim religion to educate and instruct members. And sell bean pies.
But they what?
And sell bean pies. You ever seen those guys standing in the street sometimes who be having the little magazine leaflet and bean pies to sell? Or did they not do that where you live? Oh.
Not really.
You missed that experience, yes. For those who are confused, Nation of Islam send out basically the younger members. I think for the most part, at least I feel like that's what it is. There's always some young brothers out there. But to help them raise money for support for the Nation of Islam, they sell bean pies and the Final Call, which is their newsletter, on the side of the street.
Yeah, I'm not aware of them. I was vaguely aware of the name, and I kind of Googled it real quick as a refresher, but I don't know the type of research is because the first thing that comes up is their fucking Southern Poverty Law Center thing, which I guess they're branded as a hate group there. Which I don't know the type of it.
I find that very, very a weird thing, but whatever.
No, they have like some random quotes, but I don't know who these quotes are attributed to. Like, these false Jews promote the filth of Hollywood and blah 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 blah, which I guess wouldn't surprise me since there is tension always between Jews and everybody, but Jewish people. And I'm not going to go down this road. Never mind. It's not the time for that. It's not a can of worms I want to open. Leaving that alone. Yeah, unless you have some reason to believe that information was irrelevant, I do think it might be a little irresponsible to put it out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what it is culturally about us that makes people think that there's any reason to do any of this kind of shit. And I don't therefore know how we deter them from doing it. Somebody smarter than me, take the wheel.
Yeah.
I will say though, it does make me kind of question things like just our cultural values, things like I wouldn't call myself a pacifist, but just like the idea that, in a civilized society, you deal with your problems through debate and, speech and word, thought. You duke it out in the arena of thought, not by like actually throwing blows and fighting and killing each other. And there's certain values that I think a society ought to have, and that I guess for a long time I assumed ours had them, but I've been made to question that, and not just by these acts of violence, but lots of things. Like, so it's not a popular opinion, but I remember, last year when people were just like kind of tearing down some of those Confederacy statues by force. Even that I kind of felt a bit uncomfortable by, because again, I'm pretty strict on the idea that we need to deal with our problems through talking. Well, I wasn't going to go out there and kill these people for doing that. I didn't really care that much about those statues, and I did think we should take them down. But I had a certain commitment to the idea that we don't just brute force our way through issues. We come to some kind of consensus. And maybe I'm too strict in that sense, but it is a cultural value that we could have.
No, because it's a crime. If you're defacing public property, you're defacing public property. I understand your sentiment, but when those people tore down that statue in Boston, for instance,
I mean, there was a part of me when I saw that, it's like, I admit there was a part of me when I saw them do that, I'm like, it does feel like a piece of shit that's just been sitting in the middle of the floor that needed to be gotten rid of. But I didn't support doing it that way for a reason. But yeah, I just use that as like a more minor example to kind of show out the point that like maybe we just don't actually hold certain cultural values, and I don't know how you promote them. maybe in schools, maybe through some fun little campaign. I don't know, but like there's just certain ideas and attitudes that I think one would take for granted that don't really exist.
No.
Fuck.
I mean, to be fair, for the most part, people aren't going to go to those links. But when you go to those links, you have to realize that you're not helping the situation. And this is why, like I said, the whole process, like, I feel like it's not going to really solve much. Like, at least for, I'll put it this way. Totally on board with them trying to figure it out. I just wish they didn't always feel the need to publicly put it out there so people can grab and latch on things. Maybe. Right. I don't know.
Yeah, and as we talk about it more, and I think about how much we are invested in the story as it's happening, I'm like, maybe we just shouldn't hear about it until a proper investigation is done, because it just kind of captures your imagination and there's nowhere for it to go. Like, it doesn't go toward any actual facts because it just takes time to learn shit.
Yeah. And the media don't help, because guarantee over the next 3 to 5 days, you're going to get so many panelists on there trying to break down and discuss like all these sides and points of view around the subject, but none of them will actually have the real answer to the whole thing.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And even when there are worthwhile conversations to have, like that attack on those Asian women in those establishments, it's like, you know, you started immediately seeing talks about anti-Asian bigotry occurring in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. It's like, we didn't even yet know if that's why he did it or if he just didn't like Asian people in general. I think they're, you know, once we found out they were all women and whatnot, and he started saying that crazy shit about his sex additions or whatever, we learned that there was a dimension of what's the word? Misogyny? I feel like I'm missing the word here, but you know, there was a gendered aspect to that issue to discuss as well. It's like, we just got to start talking about it in the media before we even really knew what the fuck was going on with this guy.
Like, it's understandable to make the connection because it looks on surface pretty obvious. But I do think that the way that they talk about it and frame it is just gets so out of hand. Because they like start to build these stories and these narratives. And see, it kind of goes back to the whole like why people of color kind of like to point stuff out because for so long a lot of that narrative, like the build up in the media without any actual knowledge of what goes on, has always been to an extreme level to where you get back around and you find out like, well, what they said is not true. It's the damage is done.
True enough. I mean, even if you know, if you're in the paper, you print a retraction or, you know, take back whatever claim you made. It's too. I think some of you guys might even think, if you think about how it is on social media, if you see this, sometimes some like nonsense becomes viral and it spreads, and even if the person who spread it tries to point out that it's wrong, most of the people have seen the original bullshit and may just not even see the correction. They may just not even come across it. So there's damage just because outreach isn't the same. And even if they see both, then they're probably just confused anyway, and they're probably just going to go with the less fair interpretation.
Yeah.
You see all the time. I think, I believe the story with like the term alpha wolves or whatever is like the perfect case of that. The classic case where I guess that scientist went out and was studying wolves and he noticed this dynamic between them, and I guess that's where we get the term alphas from. And then he, of course, realized that he was incorrect, that they're that there was not such a dynamic, that I believe he realized that he was examining parent and children wolves, and that's why they had that sort of demeanor to them. But even though, like a good scientist, they corrected themselves too fucking late, and now we just still use words like terms like alpha wolf because corrections aren't as powerful as they ought to be. So you should try to be right immediately if you can.
By the way, I can't think of the name of the show, but I saw the episode too.
What episode?
About the alpha wolf theory, the guy who came up with it. Cannot think of what the name of the show is right now. What's his name? Oh God, I cannot remember his name. I remember the name of the show. So Adam Ruins Everything. Yes.
Oh, I don't know if he covered it. I think I came across it in one of Stephen Baker's books.
He actually did. As he was doing a show about like the male mentality, and the mentality of alpha wolf came up, and he brought up that story.
That's surprising because it is like an interesting case that I think most people can connect to, because a lot of people use that phrase and it's like even the scientists themselves said it was bullshit. And yet, the idea that vaccines cause autism or whatever, that shit has been debunked for decades.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the doctor who even suggested that lost his fucking license. Like it could not be any more debunked. And we did study after study for decades. And yet what's done was done. Once you put that fucking idea out there, it just was mentally eroding to society pretty much to this day. People still think that.
Yeah.
That shit came out in like the 90s or whatever, I believe it was.
Yeah, but you know, it's just like certain tests that we still use that people determine don't really help, such as the SAT and things like that. Yeah.
So be more careful about how you spread things in the media, I suppose. I mean, and I don't mean to be one of these people that just like shit all over the media. I think they do good, important work and really think through some of these issues, but they might be a little overzealous to talk about them, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. And you lose sight of what the main issue is, which is, what do we need to do to stop this shit from occurring again? Anyway, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you think, because we're getting some pretty big legislation going through, we got the stimulus package, Biden's talking about his infrastructure package. Do you think there's just like a decent public motivation for, I don't know quite how to say this, because even saying that feels weird, because I do think most people are fine with, what you call common sense gun laws. It's usually just certain high-ranking Republican motherfuckers, I guess. And maybe a few Democrats too, because Joe Manchin was part of that problem, to be fair. So I shouldn't just put it all on them.
Problem. Fucking Joe Manchin.
But there are problems, or points of relative agreement, I guess, in this country that most people agree on, yet our leaders, because they're super cool, don't flow with the rest of the crowd. So I don't want to say like, oh, do you think the public's finally ready for gun law legislation? Like, I'm pretty sure most of them were already. But I just wonder, because we're making momentum in so many different areas after that stimulus package and with this approach at this infrastructure bill, which I guess deals with like a lot of environmental issues and job creation and all that shit. I wonder if there's like this sort of attitude of like America coming back after 4 or 5 years of doom, this sort of like positive wave of energy that you can kind of ride toward that sort of legislation.
Well, it's funny because I was listening to a podcast and they made a good point. You ever notice how nobody really talks about the job that Joe Biden is doing?
What do you mean?
There is no real pendulum swing like it used to be. It's like, if you think they're doing a bad job, you're going to speak out of it. If you think they're doing a good job, you're going to speak out of it. They're all sitting in the middle, just like ignoring what he's doing.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see what you mean. I don't quite know how to explain it or why it would be happening. maybe there's a certain amount of like just mentally being drained after 4 years of the Trump administration plus a year being in lockdown away from loved ones, all that stuff. It might just be too mentally tired for a lot of people to have a lot of these conversations and to really go at him. Plus, Biden's just kind of a boring guy, so
Kind of is. Because everything seems to be going straight forward. Like, you look at the $2 billion infrastructure bill, it's got some really crazy stuff in there. And
trillion.
yeah, 2 trillion. Did I say 2 billion? Bite my tongue. Yeah, $2 billion ain't going to get shit. If we're going to be honest, it's like, gee. But no, if you look at it, it does some very bold things that I hope will appease to a lot of the far left. We need to make that shit work. Like, you mentioned the environmental thing. Did you know that part of the funding is to convert all of like government cars into electronic cars, and to also subsidize states in building charging stations, more charging stations for people to encourage them to buy electric car.
When they made that point about like the fleet of vehicles the government owns and operates, I was like, I've never thought about just how much just raw equipment
Post
they are in
office
control.
alone. Think about just the post office alone.
Right. So I'm like we made that point. It's like I just never really thought about it. Like I know you all have obviously vehicles and shit. But like, yeah, that's probably a lot. Like,
yeah,
the government is quite the structure to operate.
Yeah, because I mean, shit, the military is a government branch. Oh. And I'm not saying you need electronic tanks and shit like that, but think about the basic transports like Jeeps and shit that they use, like transport trucks, and how much more efficient they can be if they were all electric.
And looking at it, I think that's part of why I mentioned like maybe it's just me, maybe I'm kind of projecting onto other people, but because I was younger when Obama came in with his hope, yes we can bullshit or whatever the fuck he said, really push for healthcare and stuff. He pushed for a lot of stuff, but I was younger at the time, so like you go through that, and then you got Trump and the Republican Party being in charge, and the thing with them is they don't really want to pass any legislation or do anything. I can't think of a word other than progressive, but that's kind of politically tainted. But they don't really want to move the nation forward in any particular way.
Anything progressive, because that's what it is. It's progress. We are trying to progress to a better place. Like I was hearing them read stats off of a podcast talking about how we're behind every place else because they made mentions like, think about this. England and France, is it England and France? I think it is France. They share a continental bullet train that goes underneath the ocean, so that people can go to France and like England.
Jackasses.
In like no time. England itself has like a couple of bullet trains just to commute through its own country. So you can like transport mass people at a quick rate, so more people don't have to drive. Less people can drive, less emissions. Cool. It's like the point was brought up on this podcast that I listened to, that we're forever trying to thump our chests and scream USA, USA, as we believe that we're the greatest country on earth. And we lag behind so many common sense things that other countries don't. Like,
it's sad that you say that, but yeah, it is true. I mean, hell, you go online, if you go to like any chat or whatever, and you deal with somebody from Europe, you're like, and they realize you're an American, you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, because they're making fun of our healthcare, our education, our the amount of gun violence, so on and so on. But it has felt kind of stagnant for a while. And not just that we haven't been making progressive moves, but it felt like there was an active desire not to. Like at most, a lot of Republican people, their main goal is to, I guess you could say like eliminate regulations or something like, free up business people more to make more money and shit like that. They might claim that's also for small business owners as well. And maybe it is, but like, that's all they really ever want to do is kind of relax some rules on one hand and, maybe make other rules stricter if we're talking about, say, birth control or something, like reproductive rights. They might want to hamper down on some of that shit. So it always feels like we're just kind of like standing still sometimes with that.
yeah, no, we definitely are. It's like, how can you be proud of a country? Like, one of the things that was mentioned was in this bill is money that's going to be put forth to the effort of fixing our water infrastructure, basically converting all our pipes from lead to something a lot more eco-friendly. And they brought
Be clear, not all of our pipes are lead, but a lot of them are lead.
Yeah.
Contain lead, yeah.
And they brought up the Flint, Michigan thing, and I was like, wow, you're right. No one's ever addressed the Flint, Michigan thing. And they were like, this is a good way to end around that solution. If the state's not going to pass it, fuck it. We're going to make it federal law that you can't have lead pipes. Now what? What you going to do?
Yeah, and I believe, because I watched some of Biden's address on this point, and he was talking about, essentially just strengthening infrastructure in general to deal with, say, flooding and, natural disasters, hurricanes. It's like, it's partially because those things are going to become more extreme as climate change continues to affect them. It's like, we should plan more for, like, if we did more preemptive work, maybe New Orleans wouldn't have got fucked in the ass as hard as they did. Now, Texas probably wouldn't have either just recently. Like, if
that's in the bill too.
Stronger infrastructure.
That's in the bill too. Addressing the national grid. Which, to be fair, Texas is fucked because Texas is using their own grid.
Sure.
But by putting this in the infrastructure bill, it shows that you're going to make an effort to try to rebuild the national grid and possibly just be like, yo, Texas, fuck you and your independent shit. You're part of the union. You're going to get this shit.
We're taking a saw like Bugs Bunny and we're cutting you off, motherfucker. How should I put this? I as an engineer, right? Like, whenever I'm working on a bit of software, say like an app for a phone or like a website or what have you, I always think in terms of like improvements, like what new feature can I add? What bug can I fix? How can I make this thing better than it was yesterday? I talk about like cultural issues around gun violence. I think this is the other thing too. Is like, I often don't feel like most people in America look at America and think, what is the next feature we can add to America? What is the next dope program we can do? Like, a lot of people look at America and act like nothing is wrong. And I'm not even just talking about problems. Like, even if nothing was wrong, we could still do things better. Like, if things were like wonderful and great, okay, let's start investing more in science and start investing more in space exploration and start developing those programs more. Like, there's sort of, I don't want to say laziness, but like just a lack of interest in improving the country and doing more cool things.
Yeah.
And it gets more annoying when you're looking at other countries who've been sort of steadily improving over the years, and we're just like, yeah, we're star-spangled awesome. It's like,
exactly.
You can't just sit on your ass and like.
And part of the problem is you mentioned people who just always try to vote against shit. Mitch McConnell came out with a statement today talking about how gross this bill was, and how he's going to fight it every step of the way because it's just nonsense. And it's like, you probably didn't even read it. You're just coming out and making a statement of opposition because that's what you do.
Didn't he say that they weren't going to vote on it pretty much no matter what anyway? So like,
yeah,
he doesn't have to. Why bother wasting the time reading it? Like, you've already decided. Reading it at this point would be inefficient.
Right. Nobody cares about your grandstand.
But like, I'm not an economist or whatever. I don't know exactly. Well, I guess they discussed paying for this by increasing the tax rate on the rich or whatever. Which, I mean, we should do that anyway. Like, it doesn't have to be specifically to pay for this. That should just kind of be the case. But so I guess I'm going to take back my point, because I was going to say, like, I don't know how this kind of thing affects the economy, but if we're intending on paying for it by this means, then to the best of my knowledge, it's fine. I don't know. Because it's not like I just look at somebody and say, like, yeah, let's drop $2 trillion. Like, it's no big deal. Like,
it actually isn't when you think about it, though, in the long run. Because think about the money they spend on military.
well, I guess I would say we shouldn't be doing that either.
No, we shouldn't. And I think that's why people, side note, I think there's people who are worried about what's going to happen with the military budget because of the appointees that he's had in the course of who's president. Because the liberals clearly want to kill the military, right? Right.
I mean, if it gets diminished somewhat, I don't think that should be the end of the world. Like, it's a pretty capable military. It's not like he's going to disband the entire military or something.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they don't get. You know, maybe we just don't build like 500,000 jets this year or something. You know, like, it's not that big a deal. But yeah, we could talk about offsetting some of the costs of some of this shit. I'm just saying, like, I acknowledge that, like, spending money is spending money.
Yeah.
But it's necessary and good shit. And we have some kind of plan for how to do it, which, because I remember, you know, back when during the Democratic primaries and shit, where you had Yang, when I was first introduced to Yang, everybody's like, how is he going to pay for all this shit that he wants to do? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, he did have a plan, though, because he was talking about taxing like these, like the kind of companies I work at, you know, these high-end tech companies that pull a shit ton of money or have like a really outsized influence in the economy, and yet we don't really tax them. I should not say more than that because I work for one, so I'm going to shut up. But I'm going to be careful where I tread on that. No,
but even if you look at the number that they're trying to raise, it's not that bad. It's like, yo, you just pay your taxes. Like, because the thing is, a lot of people like don't think about the percentages that they throw out. Remember that this is, generally speaking, the percentage that they're going to tax, not how much they're going to tax you, but what percentage of your income is liable for this taxation. Like, so, yeah, calm down.
Yeah. I'm not crazy concerned about it, but I guess the crazy thing is, like, I wouldn't mind, like, some politician, you know, discussing, you know, these costs and blah, blah, blah. And you would think traditionally that might be a conservative, but it's like, they're so fucking irresponsible that even if they brought it up, like, they're not going to have a productive debate on the cost of things in America. They're just going to kind of buck because fuck Democrats. This is all evil, the way they want to help people. And I think that's one great thing too is that it's not like, if you want to, compare this sort of culture war that's happening in America, there's always all this talk about, race issues, gender identity issues, like these sort of social identity based issues. And they matter, but a lot of these things that they're going for are just universal things. Like everybody needs bridges to drive on that aren't going to fucking explode under your car. Everybody can benefit from, more jobs being added to the economy that they can take up. Like they're universally appealing. So there's not much consternation to be had toward pursuing them.
Yeah. But they just continue to put out the public narrative that it's wrong, which it boggles the mind how they keep their jobs with that shit.
But it's just lazy. It's like they don't have a reason for saying it's wrong. They're just like, it's wrong, it's evil, it's bad. It's the worst piece of, what did McCall say? Like the worst piece of legislation passed at time here, instead of like, bruh, relax.
Right,
like,
and then he comes back with this infrastructure thing. This is the worst piece of legislation I've ever saw. Motherfucker, you just said the same thing about the stimulus. Everything that comes out now is just the worst. Like,
I find it very intriguing, exciting that, not just that we might pursue some new like green ideals with this sort of a infrastructure package, but like a Biden, as he often does, frames it around job creation. And I do think it could create a shit ton of jobs that actually not just give people a way to provide for their families, but also has a good social benefit.
well, and I understand why he frames it that way, because you talk.
He's not wrong to. I'm just saying, like,
yeah. No, you talk the money talk to make it difficult for people who don't really think about that stuff, or who don't really kind of walk through the weeds like we do when it comes to these things. Tell somebody that they have an opportunity to make money is always the easiest way to get public,
But it's also
public, opinion behind it. I should.
Right, but like, I mean, one, not only are you like creating jobs, you're going to create jobs after so much job loss during the pandemic, but also it's not like money that's just like disappearing into the ether. It's like going into I presume you're going to use some of this to like pay people to actually do those jobs, and therefore those people have money to invest in, say, home ownership, car ownership, maybe going out and buying shit from retailers. Like that, a lot of that money would come back through the economy anyway. It's not just going down a black hole. So that's all good shit. I was listening to somebody who said, maybe I wonder if like the more progressive Democrats are sort of surprised at how hard their administration seems to be pushing this kind of shit.
I think they killed it for sure.
So what do you mean?
Because where's the pushback? Part of the problem with politics is that a lot of people have a hard time existing without some type of pushback.
He's not giving them a nice target to punch at, show people how strong.
Right, exactly. Even going back to like the Joe Manchins and the like Christian cinemas of the world, their punches are kind of weak. Like, and they walk a thin line. Just like I heard after her thumbs down, Kristen Cinema like dropped like a shit ton of approval points, to where a lot of people are speculating that if the Democratic Party decided to run somebody with a more progressive edge to them, she could lose her seat even without the Democrats actually losing the election. She can get taken out like the same way AOC took out that guy in New York. I forget his name. When she got her
that's how hard she took him out. He doesn't even have a name anymore. He's dead.
Yeah, I don't even remember who the fuck he is anymore. And he had existed for a long fucking time.
Yeah. Sad thing is, I remember what you're talking about. I'm like, what the fuck was his name?
Yeah. Like he was establishment like shit, and she just came out of nowhere, like, just fucking like slaughtered his ass.
My God. No, I can see what you mean, because like the idea of somebody like you said, like a Joe Manchin, who's like, he wants to come off as being like, he's not one of these crazy liberals. He's a reasonable guy. That kind of narrative could only work if you have somebody who at least could come off as crazy liberal to kind of fight. And you can't do that with Joe. He's just like, even when he's talking about environmental shit, he's like, look, bruh, it's about creating jobs. Like, he's too fucking down to earth, middle of the fucking lane.
Yeah, like
really.
Because I brought up Joe Manchin because it especially harms his contrary ass, because think about all the like folksy West Virginia values he talked about, like people don't want this, like people want this and that and stuff like that. You're the senator of a state that has been overseeing a dying, if not dead, industry for a while now. Coal mining is not fucking the deal that it was. And this infrastructure deal kind of addresses the exact needs that his state has. Finding a means of getting jobs to people who need them. People who their jobs have, as time has progressed, kind of become obsolete, If I'm a coal miner and you're telling me that I can get a job, I don't even need the education. Well, you'll train me to learn how to, like, learn whatever skill I need to do. Like, say, we go to turbine energy, and Joe could be like, look, man, y'all want a new job? Let me put this in your legislation's ear, your state legislation's ear, your governor's ear. We're willing to facilitate like a couple of water turbine power plants in West Virginia. Y'all got like nice rivers and shit like that can do it. And we could train all y'all motherfuckers to run this shit. How about it? Kill two birds with one stone. Revitalize your economy and help improve the environment. It's a win-win, baby. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Trying to stop myself from laughing. It becomes irrational at some point to like fight some of these moves, because, and it's always been the point that, be green or whatever, trying to go toward that route would have created jobs, because somebody needs to fucking do all this shit. But yeah, you give jobs to people, they get money, they are improving the life of themselves and everybody around them. Like it's pretty much as win-win as it fucking gets. Like and when they say like, oh, it's disgusting. Like, it's just fucking irrational. It's fucking crazy.
And if they need an example of how things like this work, because again, podcast reminded me of this. Go back to the 1950s, like right after World War II, in fact, when Dwight Eisenhower became president. All of our highway infrastructure is the way it is because Dwight Eisenhower was like, yo, we're still using these old like one route country roads and shit like that to connect state to state. We need a proper like highway so people can get back and forth, not only within the state, but within the fucking country at a faster pace. And that's where the highway system came about, through him and his infrastructure bill. And like, look how much that's changed, the way this country was. Because again, you just had single routes going east, west, north, south. Like, and technically you still have that with the interstate, the way that it's mapped out, but it hits so many other corners. Like, think about all the exits that are in states and where they go to. That shit didn't exist at one time. Like you literally had to ride down to Bob's Road and then take Bob's Road to get to whatever like town.
It's weird to think
Certain days
about.
were.
It's like, but it's a good thing to think about because yeah, like things you take for granted did not always fucking exist. Social Security did not always fucking exist. Like you can move a country forward in important directions. And when you move them forward in certain directions, it gives you opportunities to do things you couldn't have done before. So like, you know, again, as an engineer, whenever you're building software, you have like automated testing that you can build that runs to make sure like as you make more changes, old shit doesn't break. And one thing you always want to do is like improve the testing, the automated testing that runs so that you can build more shit with less work. Because I remember like at an old job, I kept wanting to push for like changing the way we did our testing. And that was like a big investment, big time investment, blah, blah, blah. And there's always this sort of tension of like, well, the customers want new shit. And it's like, well, if we fixed our testing infrastructure, we could produce new shit faster because part of the reason we're so slow is that the testing infrastructure is shitty and it takes forever to update. So yeah, if we fixed that, we could give them new features more often.
Yeah. It's like, why? So why are you fighting this shit?
If you fix, you know, if you improve public transportation and roads and shit, that'll not only does it open up job opportunities for people to do that work, but it could create opportunities for other people to get work because then maybe they don't need a car in their place. You know, if public transportation is good enough that they can use that instead, maybe that opens up new opportunities for them as well.
Yeah,
and helps the environment because there's less cars. But
like a lot of people are able to commute back and forth to work much more efficiently in England because of that high speed rail. Like that shit gets them like from one end of the country in like no time. Yeah, look at our train systems. Like if I wanted to catch a like train from here to Florida, that's probably like close to a day or something on the train, if not longer.
I'm sure it would be, to be honest. Like,
you know,
I think my father, you know, he moved up north when I was in Florida, and there was some talk about maybe going on the trains, especially when the pandemic and shit started to hit early. And I'm like, how long that's gonna fucking take? Fuck that.
Let me see.
You sleeping on that train, baby.
Yeah, so if I wanted to go to Orlando right now from where I'm at in the DC area, you know how fucking long it takes?
16 hours?
You're close. Almost 18 hours. 17 hours, 58 minutes. The shortest trip is 17 hours, 24 minutes.
Yeah, I take the plane.
Right, exactly.
Shit.
But you could make much better progress if you made, you know, high-speed trains, high-speed electric trains.
Sure.
Like, yeah, it'll cost you now, but it's just like, if I spend money, think about it like a computer. If I spend the money on this shit, like to get a proper build, I don't have to like replace anything. I can just patch and fix things for a long time. I can extend its life and I don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to be good enough or efficient enough, because I'm going to make the most efficient computer possible. So it'll keep up with times, and then I'll just upgrade when I can. Same thing with the infrastructure. It should be put in a place where it should be this hard to upgrade. Like, you know, think about the road work that you see when you're driving. How is it takes them so long to fix these things?
I would love to be educated on that. I don't know why.
Like
I find it hard to believe that they physically can't do it. I remember people would say like, "Oh, they're just making the job take longer so that it'll pay longer." And I'm like, they're making it take 10 years. Like I would assume they would be fired at some point. Like if they were dragging it out for years just to get more of a paycheck. That felt overly cynical to me. Maybe it's regulations and rules or something. I don't know. But that's another thing we need to work on too. Is it's not just like actually building shit, but like being more efficient and streamlined in how we do this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was one of Oliver's pieces or if it was like on a podcast, but they kind of compared like how much it costs to build shit here. And they were talking about like, rail stations and shit like that. It's like the cost is way more different than I would have thought.
I mean, it's simple. It's simple math. Like, spend the money today, save much more money, and make much more money in the future.
But I'm thinking on saving though, because I've thought about that, and people will kind of balk at certain costs, and I just think like if we want to talk about the cost it takes to address climate change and all this shit, it's like, oh my god, it's so much. And I just think to myself, it probably wouldn't. I haven't like read anything to justify this. It's kind of just like an assumption I'm making. Like I would assume it would cost less to fix some of these problems if we didn't wait decades to do anything. Like we've already let climate change get more and more out of control year after year, even though we've known about it for a long time. Or if you want to look at infrastructure itself, you just in terms of the health of like bridges and roads and all that shit, like say, well, you've been letting them go to shit for decades, right? Like, of course it's going to cost a bunch if you want to fix them all in one go. It's, take your computer analogy. If you wait till your entire computer shits the bed, like the CPU fries or something like that, and the whole thing goes, then you're going to have to buy a whole new computer. But like, if you're being efficient and taking care of it up front, then yeah, maybe you have to upgrade a piece every once in a while, but it's not like one giant lump sum cost.
Yeah, and but again, it's all about opposing the opposite side, right?
I can't imagine how long this could last. Because I just can't. I don't know. It was one thing with like, Obama or Hillary or whatever, where it was just a combination of, racism and sexism and, just fuck the other team. But like, shit this popular, like nobody really fucking hates this stuff. The worst that they might say is like, this is a lot of money to be spending. And even that's not like a great argument because I don't know. You just see poll after poll, a lot of those people agreeing with like what Biden wants to do. It's like, how long can you really resist this? Your voters don't like it.
Yeah. And it's a good segue into the next topic, which is with the Georgia voting rights bills that have been popping up, and other states doing all these crazy voting right things to limit people's ability to vote in elections. The whole you're required to have a state issued ID to vote. You can't get food in lines, eliminating like people being bused to poll places, things like that. A lot of businesses have started to respond. Delta was one of the first denouncing the voting rights, which led to retaliation by the state of Georgia to look into increasing their taxes that they're charged for existed. And you've had a couple of things like come out in other areas, including today it was announced that the All-Star game for Major League Baseball, which was supposed to be held in Atlanta, Georgia this summer, is being moved because they are against the voting laws. And of course, Georgia's pissed. A lot of Republicans are pissed. There's actually a representative who said that he's opening an investigation to have Major League Baseball removed off of the antitrust law exemption list, which I find very, very odd I'm trying to figure out how is baseball breaking antitrust laws. I
guess maybe they feel there isn't enough competition, but like in terms of like baseball leagues, but I don't know. Like, what the fuck do you do about shit like that? Like,
nobody has stopped anybody though from creating their own baseball league except for themselves. So
I mean, Vince McMahon tried to create his own football league just for twice, actually.
yeah,
He's tried it twice.
There's several football leagues.
doable.
Greg Miller has a football league, for God's sakes, right now.
Yeah.
Fucking video game nerd.
They're not popular, but like,
right. It's not like it's just that, you know, everybody prefers the NFL. So if you want to create a baseball league, you can fucking create a baseball league. Like, man.
But yeah, so speaking on the corporation reaction to these voter suppression laws sweeping the nation, you know, often when businesses respond to stuff, I just got to roll my eyes like, you just got to say some sharp paper. What's it really going to do? But as much as I got to make fun of baseball, when I saw that idea that they were going to move their shit, I was like, that's an interesting strike because one, not that people should be traveling. I don't know when that shit is, but like.
Well, generally speaking, baseball All-Star game is always like the first Tuesday of July.
Okay, so I don't know where we're going to be.
There's a potential possibility that we could be in a place where the idea of hosting something like that isn't as horrifying as it is now.
Okay. Fair. Yeah. So let's take that tack. Like let's assume that they could bring in like a decent amount of money really into the state by hosting it there. The fact that they took it away from them is one, a financial hit, and two, it's going to be a cultural hit because there's probably people in that state that would actually like to have attended that game and maybe we're planning on it and looking forward to it. And you just took away a major sporting event because of some shit you pulled off. So I was like, that's actually probably a pretty impactful move from that group that would actually affect that state politically. So yeah, I was kind of curious about that shot because when other companies just like make some random statement, I'm like, well, you know, what did that really do? Like if Facebook says like we don't support XYZ, it's like, well, you're gonna disable Facebook in the state. No, so not gonna take away the shit people.
Which is why the Delta reaction is so weird because it's like Delta said what they said. Call it how you want. How is it that the government in the state of Georgia feels like they need to punish them for speaking out? Because Delta didn't make the same, didn't maneuver to leave the state or anything. They said, yo, this is some fucked up shit. Y'all shouldn't be doing this. And it's a weird kind of like fucking dictatorship type reaction. Like you don't speak out against the state, so you get punished. That makes sense.
I mean, they didn't like how their election results should turn out, and they're trying to take away voting. So, like,
fair enough.
That is kind of their normal reaction.
Fair enough. But no, and for those who don't know, this whole thing with the All-Star game, it's not unprecedented. Because do you remember a few years ago, North Carolina state legislation passed a law against transgender people using the same bathrooms as people. Like if you were a male who transferred over to being a full female, they were trying to force you to still go to the men's room because you were born that way. It was that type of situation. A lot of people don't remember, but the NBA made a similar move when they were like, oh, is that how y'all working? We're not doing the All-Star game in Charlotte this year, so fuck you. And they took the All-Star game from Charlotte that year. Soon after, once they realized the money that they were losing, even though it didn't happen in time to get the All-Star game, they changed the rule to where they could bring the All-Star game back the next year because they wanted their money. But I say that to like show you guys, like, don't think that it's a like soft move or that it's a move that may not have any consequences. Just like it's not just a bullshit move for a sports organization to do something like that, because it can seriously affect what's going on in that city to the point where changes will be made.
I mean, and that's an interesting point too. Like some I guess I can call it business in that sense. Like some organizations are just better positioned to be able to affect change in an area, depending on like what their relationship is. So just culturally, people love fucking sports. I mean, hell, like I'm sure like the countries themselves, some of them don't like it because of the cost and all that shit. But like getting to host the Olympics and shit is a big deal. Like plenty of people come. It's a big fucking thing. Everybody's happy. Blah 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 blah. The cost of all the things that goes through that aside. If you tell people that in a place that like we were gonna get the fucking Super Bowl, except now we're not, that's gonna really fuck with them. They're gonna be really mad. Just fuck the financial cost of that. There's gonna be anger in your state over that. So yeah, I haven't really thought about it in that sense before, but sure, sports ball organizations are well equipped to affect some real change. So you should really be mad at those motherfuckers who weren't with what's that Nealon guy's name? Fuck.
Oh, Kaepernick.
Yes. I'm sorry. I just started thinking about somebody else entirely. Like once I had somebody else's name in my head, like I just can't get back to the original.
Could have been worse. She could have said something like offensive about the man. So
no. I thinking about him made me think about police violence in general, and then I just thought like George Floyd. And then once I thought that name out loud, not out loud, but like once that name was in my head, like I just couldn't get back to the original. But yeah, Kaepernick, like for any of those organizations that just, didn't want to help out or do anything, like you should be really mad at them because they had a unique ability to do that. Because like I don't think, because I think Dell printers or whatever made some kind of statement. I'm like, what the fuck is Dell gonna do? Really? Are they gonna not sell printers in Georgia? Like, come on.
Well, and that's why like it's nice that these companies have made statements. It would definitely be more interesting if, like, say for instance, Coca-Cola was like, you know what, we had a nice history in Atlanta. I feel like, North Carolina's looking nice this type of year, and they'll probably charge us less anyway. So we're gonna move all of like Coca-Cola's facilities to North Carolina because we can't deal with a state that's gonna do this to their people. Like if more companies didn't just make the statement, but also put the caveat that like, we're not going to like be housed here. We're making the transition to move to someplace a lot more, fair and balanced to their citizens. You see a lot of shit change fast. Because that's the thing. Fuck with somebody's money and they will react every fucking time.
Rightfully so. I kind of jokingly responded to it, but like, you talk about the Republican reaction to this kind of thing, which is sort of like, well, fuck them then. Let's just get them. How dare they come at us? That is the concerning thing about them. They're just like so untethered. Like they don't care what their constituents want. They don't even care about money. Apparently, like they're fine just pissing off their their big, because they have relationships with these big businesses. They're fucking donors to political campaigns and shit. It's like, so what? Y'all don't even care about losing money anymore? Like, do y'all just not care about anything? Is it just as long as you can perform like a psychotic asshole as much as possible and get those people out that are also psychotic assholes to support you, you're good? Like, you don't want to pass legislation. You don't want to fucking get money. You don't want to like, what do you do with these motherfuckers? Like, how do you affect them?
Well, like I found the like whole threat towards Delta kind of hilarious. Because even if they try to do something like that, it's going to get knocked down. in in the courts, because no circuit judge or like I don't even think the Supreme Court judges, even stacked, are going to fucking be like, yeah, that's okay. No, it's not okay. It really isn't okay for you to do stuff like that. It's against the law. They haven't broken any rules or they haven't done anything to violate it. All they did was piss you off or hurt your feelings.
I don't know. Like the thought just popped in my head. Like, what if the airlines just decided we're not flying any flights to or from Georgia until you stop being dicks? Like, can you imagine how fucking furious people in Georgia would be if they couldn't leave their shithole state and go to like New York? That was a joke, Georgia. Don't kill me. I'm just saying, like, can you imagine, like, especially as we're coming out of a pandemic and people want to get ready to like travel somewhere else, and the airlines were like, "Fuck you, you're staying there till you learn." I bet you'd see a lot of change. Really, maybe not good change. Maybe anarchy. Maybe they'd actually kill their leaders, but like.
Nah, they wouldn't do that, but you'll see a shift. You could see a shift. Like if the closest state you're going to fly towards Georgia is South Carolina or Florida, for instance, I might as well move to South Carolina or Florida and just eliminate, like,
God,
that burden. But it's just like with anything. Like if these places start to leave, the money's going to go someplace else. Like wherever MLB puts the All-Star game, that city's going to be more than thrilled to host it. And they're going to be like cha-ching, and they're going to do everything they can to put on a great show because they want to take advantage of the economic boom they're going to get from, people using our stadium to play the game. People coming in town, not just buying a ticket, but they're hanging out a couple of days. They're eating at our local restaurants, shopping at our local shops,
staying at our hotels.
They got a hotel. Exactly. Like, oh, you fucked up, Atlanta. We'll pick up the bag. Like, come on.
Yeah. To take it back to the voter suppression stuff. Got to do something about these motherfuckers. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, these are the kind of people that could possibly win. Like, people who don't respect even the idea of democracy. Because the one thing I wanted to say that I kind of forgot about because we got sidetracked is just how incredibly bold it is for them. I can't remember the phrase, voter integrity or something like that. It's the phrase they've been kind of using. Like, bruh, you really gonna say people in line can't get food or fucking water that are waiting for hours? And how does that ensure the integrity of a vote? The fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just human decency.
But if anything, you might be more inclined to send somebody else to vote in your place just because you can't stand in line for 15 hours. Like, that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. And I'm sure somebody would like to say, like, you guys are so focused on like the no food and water line shit. What about requirements for certain kinds of IDs? That helps, increase integrity. Like, that's not why they're doing it. Even if it is, then whatever. You can talk about that, certain kind of verifications if you want. But first of all, voter fraud is incredibly rare in the first place. So I don't even know that we should be investing much into doing that. And even if you did, you should still be trying to ensure more people can vote, and that's not what you are doing, as a matter of fact. So you can't make this argument.
Like, I don't remember if it was from Georgia or another state, but I heard one of the proposals for anti-voting laws was shouldn't allow people to vote on Sundays.
Why?
And that's the thing. They didn't. I don't even think the issue was necessarily religious. It was mostly something about it's unfair, and I
assume it was.
If anything, the weekend is the best time for most people to vote because they don't have to worry about work.
Well, I mean, they're also like closing in like the window of time that you could go in to vote during. Essentially, what are normal
early voting
hours,
is being closed. eliminating drop
Right.
boxes, all that bullshit.
Like, why does eliminating early voting help ensure the integrity of voting? Like, they're so fucking bold with this shit. Like, they don't even feel the need to even pretend they're saying something rational.
Yeah, and it's so stupid because you think about, again, how did they get voted into office? They keep the same philosophies, the same mentality. The world is changing. And at best, what they're doing is fighting against change. Instead of, you know what? Let's adapt. Like, I think we mentioned this before. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or offline or something, but the idea of Black people like having a lot of conservative values that would match up with the Republican Party if they would stop, like, opposing certain things that benefit other people. In particular, opposing, or in the case of Georgia, creating legislation that targets a specific race. Because let's be real, Biden won by 12,000. Part of why he won by 12,000 was because the urban inner city areas came the fuck out. The large populace of Black people within the Atlanta metropolitan area came out. Large amount of Hispanic people in the metropolitan area came out. Large percentage of Asian, Pacific Islanders, you name it. Like, anybody with a progressive like mindset of any color, they flooded those boxes. And early voting this year helped make it even easier because a lot of people were like, oh, they weren't aware of certain things being around, but because of Stacey Abrams and others working to make sure people knew about the rules, people came out. And that's the biggest problem. It's not that, as you said, there's voter fraud or anybody broke the rules. It's that, hey, they now know what the rules are. So we need to change these because they know actually what their rights are. Holy shit.
I mean, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
No,
you're good.
I was just at a loss for words for a moment. But that's exactly it. I don't think it gets pointed out the way that it should, at least among like most people who notice it. It's like just how not American it is. Like, central to the American ideal is the idea that the people choose their leaders. It should be it should be even easier to vote than it currently is. We're talking about like making it hard. Like, it shouldn't even be as hard as it is now. It should not be the case that these people were in line for that long anyway. That is an incredible inefficiency for human beings to just stand in line like a bunch of fucking maniacs. Like that. I've always hated that image. Like, people celebrate, like, yo, look at this line of voters. They're all, engaged in the democratic process. Like, it's, when I was younger, like 2000 something, right? Like, come on, we should be able to do this in a more streamlined fashion than a bunch of people just standing in a fucking line.
Yeah, I think
I want to live in the future already. Come on.
2.5, 3 hours for Obama's first election.
Like when I voted in the 2016 or whatever, I tried to go like super early one day, and it was like still a bit, but like, it wasn't a very popular area, so it was kind of out there. It was not that bad for me to do it, but like, yeah, I always hate that image itself of people just waiting in long lines to vote because they're so excited to participate in democracy. Well, make participating in democracy not a pain in the ass. I'm tired of living in the past or living in the future with cool shit where you can actually do things in an efficient manner.
Yeah, and it's like you're working to make it even less efficient. Like, you shouldn't discourage people from voting because you seem to not want to change the way that you do things to help yourself get elected. Like, all these people panicking and talking about You know, if we don't do something, then there'll never be a Republican voted in like hundreds of years or thousands of years. It's like, well, it ain't going to be because of the technology or the availability of options. It's going to be because your philosophies don't hold up as much no more. You get pockets, but
You're pretty much just going after the most passionate, I guess, hypercharged people, and in some cases charging them up because it's convenient, I guess. Like, as people point out, that like you know, whenever you challenge them and say there's no voter fraud or whatever, there's no problem with voter integrity, it's like, well, people feel like there is, and we need to address that. That's, as many news actors point out, it's like, yeah, they feel that way because you're spreading that narrative. Like, you're making them scared and nervous, and then using that fear and nervousness as a justification to do shit. Like, you are the cause, sirs. It's kind of it's a dumb comparison, but I'm a wrestling guy, so why not? It kind of reminds me of like when people would talk about Cena maybe ever making a heel turn. And I would hear the argument that like, oh, but Cena's too great of a babyface. All the kids love him. He sells all this merch and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, he sells so much merch because he has so much merch and he's featured all the fucking time. Like, when I was a kid and he was hot, like, this motherfucker would be in my dreams. He was promoting someone and just driving me crazy. So, you know, we got guys like Punk and Brian coming around, like, they're not going to sell as much as Cena. It's like, well, you're kind of forcing that to be the issue because you don't really, you've created a situation in which it's hard to outsell him.
yeah.
And I compare that to the Booker part. It's like, you guys are creating some of these problems and then acting like you have the solution.
Like, because they don't want to adapt and they don't want to come up with an actual plan and a philosophy, they're failing and they can feel like it going away. But instead of changing and adapting, like most creatures, not just human beings, most creatures do to changes in life, they're just like, could you imagine, like, you know, a species of bird flying like in a tropical area for most of their lives, and then all of a sudden global warming turns it into an ice cap? You think that tropical bird is going to still continue to live where it's at?
Oh, it's going to move or it's going to die.
Exactly. It's not going to let itself getting froze the fuck over. It's going to go to another tropical place to thrive.
Which I guess is a perfect comparison here. It's like, you're worried about, you know, the survival of the Republican Party. It's like, well, if they want to survive, they should adapt. If they can't adapt, then they should, in that sense, die. Like, not that I want, you know, just one view in politics. Not that I'm not saying that Democrats only have one view and they're so homogenous. I'm just saying,
but
like,
one major party that can have some type of influence, or like at least get elected, because who's going to replace if say the Republican Party totally like falls to complete shit? Who's going to replace them? Libertarians? The Green Party?
I mean, if they do, I feel like you're just going to have the same problem all over again. Like, they might be able to pull up some votes just because, you know, contrarianism is fun, but like, you're going to get to the same shit where they become too untenable to vote for because they have some crazy issue. And I'm not saying like Democrats can never hit that route either. If, you know, any group can go crazy left unchecked, I guess. But like, I think the main point is that if you're not going to perform well, you're going to fail.
Yeah. Speaking of failures, though, Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz is under investigation by the FBI for potentially being involved with a minor in possible sex trafficking in the area. He is, of course, vehemently denied it, even through his buddy Tucker Carlson under. under the bus. So it's prompted him to react like, I don't know what he's talking about. It's just crazy.
But you know what? Shit like that too. Like, you invited this motherfucker on your show to talk. Why? Because he's a Republican, pretty much. Like, he's one of these psychos that kind of is in your camp of people. like you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, why are you even entertaining this motherfucker? You know, like when I look at Tucker Carlson and get that sort of association, like, you deserve that. You had him on, and you had him on for a reason, not just to have like open discussion. But come on, you're kind of part of that social group. But yeah, this guy is all up in the news. I'm sure Cuomo over there is glad to have somebody else taking some attention. I don't know why I felt the need to take a shot at that guy.
Because he kind of deserves it. He's being a douche about this situation too. Yeah.
But like, what a dumb all of this shit. Like, his reaction, like, I've never paid for sex. What's it he said? He got on the news and he's like, you know, in the past, I've been very generous with girlfriends. And maybe I paid for some shit here and there. I'm like, why would you say that? Like, why would you go out loud and say
like, I didn't, like, basically say I didn't pay them directly, but you know.
Do you not have a lawyer advising you? Like, everyone, like,
yo,
every couple days
if I found out this motherfucker
studied
studied law, like most of these people claim they did.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I talk about being detached. Like, you can be as dumb as possible and still succeed. Like, why? There's no reason to say anything like that. And he just comes out. I like the look on your face.
Man graduated from William and Mary Law School.
Oh, there you go.
He has a law degree. Oddly enough, he went to Florida State University too. But yeah.
Well, I didn't go there, so we're cool. No association. I wouldn't care, but like, let that be a lesson to you guys. Like, having a college degree does not inherently make you a genius. Ben Carson.
He worked for a law firm. God damn it. You motherfucker. You should know better. I would love to see his case record.
I wonder if he does. I mean, I don't even know what to think about that, but there is, and this is probably why the Republican Party is so much trouble. There's so many people in that group that are just performers. You know, you talk about him, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like their whole thing. True, Trump himself, like,
yeah,
their whole thing is pretty much just to like put on this show of like madness for their followers to indulge in. So I don't want to say they're like always in character, but there's something to them where like they kind of have to act a certain way all the time. And by a certain way, I mean destructively idiotic. So I can't help but wonder, like, maybe he does know better, but this is just kind of the brand he's chosen now. Or maybe he just like that because, I mean, you know, some of these allegations, like, you know, being all up into drugs, fucking these people, showing people pictures, like, this is weird. He's a weird guy. He's a weird guy.
I'm curious to see how this investigation on Gates is going to go, though. There's, of course, pressure for him to quit. He refuses to. And I kind of am glad he did. Because
letting me drag down the media for longer.
Well, not just that, but by not quitting, like, if the FBI comes back with some conclusive shit, you've pretty much put yourself in a position where you're pretty much eternally fucked. Like, you really don't have a choice but to leave. Like, that's a hard thing to come back from politically.
So, you know, you asked earlier, like, how do people vote for these people? I look at that and I'm like, is there ever any reflection when like a scandal like this comes out. Like if he gets into serious legal trouble over this in particular, do you not at least look at your vote and be like, all right, maybe that wasn't the best judgment, something? Are you going to elect another would-be criminal?
Well, I think part of the reason he's not quitting, because I'm looking up, he probably feels very, very comfortable considering where he lives. By the way, guys, here's a lesson of why we need to get gerrymandering out, and we need to fairly once and for all zone off areas and never touch it ever again. Because he's in the first district of congressional district for Florida. It's a 77% white area. Yeah.
Upset. I mean, it's Florida. It's in the South. It's not shocking.
Clearly.
Like, how many of these people do you have to seriously put in the circus before you realize you've built a circus?
I don't know. I guess it's hard to tell though when you're the clown. Like, as far as you're concerned, like hiring another clown is you're hiring another normal person. You're not realizing that you're the fucking clown.
You know what? It might even lead to that point I made earlier about the fact that I think a lot of people look at the country and don't think about what could be better. I wonder if maybe their voters have the same problem. Like, what is it they want to achieve? And do they think a certain politician could achieve it? Or, the other way, like if you talk about just platforms, do you care what the politician's platform is, like what they want to do? When I was living in Florida, I remember looking at the ballot and I can't remember the fucker's name. But he was into kind of promoting, because, they shoot off a lot of space shit from there. And he was kind of into promoting that sort of shit. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's do more space shit. He was a Republican too, so I was kind of interested. When I was reading more about him, he was a little too hard for guns for me, but it kind of matters what they want to do. But if you don't believe that the place you live can improve and don't care about that, I can see how you might not give a shit about who you're really voting for.
Yeah.
Like
enough, looking up this district stuff, I didn't know Joe Scarborough was a Congress member.
Morning, Joe.
He apparently was the representative for the first district between 1995 and 2001.
I feel like he mentions it pretty often that he used to be there. Although I haven't watched him in a long time, but like he's definitely talking. Not at length, but every once in a while it just comes up like, when I was in fucking office, like he's fucking bragging. We would go out and we would do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Fundraising is bullshit, blah, blah. Or his favorite, what's that dumb shit he says? I'm just a country lawyer. Like, oh my God, this motherfucker. You're that dad that thinks you're funny. Just does the same fucking thing every day till the day you die. Like,
all right.
And then you're just like, not understanding why the kids don't laugh anymore.
Him running is a perfect example of like why Matt Gaetz keeps getting elected. Because I'm looking at his election, his history in the first district. When he first ran in 94, Jesus, that's all the people. It's only like in all of these elections, it's only like 70,000 people roughly, it seems, to be in the area. So again, makes sense. Not that many people, and it's predominantly like white and conservative. Okay. He won it's a couple of 100,000 people. My bad. He got 112,000 votes to his opponent's 70,000. And then he got like over 175,000 as opposed to about 67,000 from his opponent in 93. 98, he got 99.5% of the vote. His opponent only got 663 votes. And then in his final run in 2000, he got 100% of the votes because nobody would run against him. Because they just realized, they ain't nobody going to vote for anybody blue in the district. It was like, fuck it.
I'm gonna let
So
you have
now
this
I
one.
need to see, huh?
He's like, let's just let him have this one. It's not worth it. Fuck it.
All right. Now I need to see Matt Gaetz because I feel like he's living a lie that of the whole this is what the people want. Because if Scarborough can pull off that, he has to be able to pull that shit off. Oh no, he only got 69% of the vote. Wow. You're punk.
I mean, yeah, we'll see how this develops. And just as importantly, I guess we'll see how his party takes to it because, as we've mentioned before, for better or worse, those motherfuckers stick together until until it's untenable, I guess.
I guess. And replace him. That's wild. But we're interested to see what happens with this whole trafficking thing and minors.
It goes back to the idiocy though, because they're gonna just replace him with somebody just as problematic, and they're gonna
and that's the problem. He can resign. It's not like his ego is stopping him from resigning, in my opinion. It's not like for the good of the party at all. Because they'll be fine without him. They just like they did with him, they'll find another moron to dump in that place.
But how does this not? I mean, maybe need to be patient. This must be hurting them to have clowns over and over and over and over again. Again, it's not like they're the only ones ever involved. I just mentioned Cuomo earlier, but or if you want to bring up Franken or whatever, they're not the only people. Republicans are not the only people involved in scandal.
No,
but it's a lot. And I have to assume it must taint the public image of your party at some point.
And again, it's addressed so much differently. I can't stress this enough. Franklin was going to be a presidential candidate at one point. A lot of people thought that he would run and might have a chance. I don't know. Well, we'll see because Matt Gaetz, he has ambitions. We'll see if he can, if he can grow a fucking conscious. And the thing is, it's not that I want him to quit. I want him to acknowledge the fucked up shit he did, and to at least mitigate it, if not fix it. I mean, he probably can never fix it. I think at this point, his career is over. And he just needs to acknowledge it. Seriously.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway. I think that's it for this episode. Anything you have to plug, sir, before we out?
Buy my new shirts. No, I'm not selling merchandise. It's not my shirt. And nobody buying it either. I'm sick of you jackasses coming in every time Marvel does some shit, trying to make some shit that was niche be cool. All right. I know where that rant is going. If I had a kid, I bet I would have named him Miles, but I can't now because all the black people saw Spider-Man. Now it's 7 trillion Miles being born.
You can always try Rhodey.
Yeah. hatred. I don't watch the shows, guys.
Yeah.
Which by shows, I obviously mean Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Come on. I shouldn't have to spell it out for you. Also, Mortal Kombat's coming out soon. I shouldn't have to tell you that. You should know. You should be ready.
I really can't wait for that. I'm very curious how they're going to handle these like finishers and signature moves.
I don't even know if I think it's going to be good. I'm just excited. Like I'm probably going to watch the first OG Mortal Kombat movies in preparation. And those are shitty. Like you can see that they're on green screen and everything. It's great. They're cheap and beautiful.
As most old things are. Except for me. I'm quite expensive.
He's a high class hooker. Treat him right. Yeah, nothing too much to plug. It's been
hold on. What's the Della Reese line? I'm an honest hoe.
I'm hoping to get back on a couple of books to recommend to you guys. We've got a demo events thing coming up at work, so I've been really grinding to get some features and shit out. And sleep is for the weak. So I'm kidding. If you guys can sleep. It's super important.
Please do. Don't fuck with your sleep, especially in these days and times. Get yourself enlisted for vaccination. Take care of your body. Take care of each other, please.
Yep. Go in there. Get stabbed with a needle and get out. I shouldn't say stabbed. Maybe that sounded like weird.
Yeah, especially as I'm sitting here in my mind, I'm like, come on. I'm already fucked with needles anyway. Like, I did
one of those things that like sounded better in my mind until I said it out loud. Like, maybe that's why I didn't get into written marketing. Like, I don't really seem to care how I say things.
Yeah. You'll never sell a piece of software on your own, sir. Damn thing.
I really wouldn't, because I don't. I won't say I don't like people, but like sometimes I can be kind of a dick. Like I was sent to talk to like some customers of some software that I used to work on. And I think they asked, like my manager asked me like a hypothetical question to be like, so what if they say, you know, why did the software do X, Y, Z? What are you going to say? I'll be like, I don't fucking know, dude, it's software. You know, like, didn't we make this thing because humans are inept? Like, why should I question why the software did it, bro? We made it because we didn't want humans making it, right? Like, and that was apparently not the right answer. So I'm not good with people, apparently.
Yeah. Stay out the public eye. And you get roasted.
Watch your shit. Read X-Men, kids.
Yeah. That'll work. That'll work. I actually need to find some stuff to catch up on and read so I can understand you comic book nerds a little bit more. Anyway, I'm gonna go finish eating this popcorn shrimp. Again, thank you everybody for coming through, listening, watching. We appreciate it. Don't date minors, even if their parents consent, please. Yeah. Don't Matt Gates yourself. Take action. Don't try to bog things down and be a turtle like Mitch McConnell. And for the love of God, just be happy that you're more intelligent than Ted Cruz, because that man's dumb as shit. Anyway, take care, everybody, and we will see you next time on The Reason Reborn. Peace.